Cheryl.
I'm Elizabeth.
We've been together for over 10 years, and I think it's always interesting to tell people how we met, because we met, of all places, at a church.
At a church. Go figure that.
And considering that we both grew up in traditions and faith traditions that did not, let's say, affirm our being lesbians, that we ended up meeting at a church was really quite surprising.
Right. I was living in Philadelphia, and Cheryl was living in Manhattan, and there was a conference at the church where she was doing her field placement. At the time, she was in seminary.
Now, growing up, I grew up as a Muslim, and you grew up as?
I grew up in a very conservative Baptist household and church. I was never dipped in the water.
But, so, you know, and often religious organizations, institutions, churches, mosques, synagogues have not exactly been gay friendly. So, again, that we were in a church was pretty surprising. First, it was surprising being in a church rather than a mosque for me, and being in a church again for you. So, as Elizabeth said, we were at a conference.
We're at this conference. We're both Unitarian Universalists, and this was a national conference for LGBTQ folks in Manhattan. So we were both there.
We were both there, yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had a service at the beginning of it, and I had been asked to be a substitute at the last minute, and so I went, and after that we were all standing around in the fellowship hall for coffee and tea and
Conversation.
and
But wait a minute. So, like, she has this little bit part in the ceremony, and she's doing a reading, and so I say, "Oh, she's cute. Who is she?" But again, we're Unitarian Universalists, and like sort of the straight gals, you know, they look like lesbians. So, like, I didn't know. So I thought she was cute, and so we're downstairs later in the coffee, tea, conversation place.
And I'm looking at her going, "Oh, I think she's kind of cute." She's right height and everything. And a good friend of mine says to me, you know, she's single. And I said, well, but I'm working here, and so I have a code of ethics as a minister. And she then pointed out, but that woman is not a member of your congregation. And I went, good point. Very good point. At which point she says, you should give her your card. And I say, I don't have a card. She's like, she's amazed and says, why don't you, this is why you're single, because you come to a conference where there are going to be tons of lesbians and you don't bring a card. I'm like, I'm a student, I don't have a card. But I looked at my watch and noticed the time and said, you know, there is a office store that's open late, and if I leave right now in the next 5 minutes, I can go and make a card tonight. So I did. I went and I got a pack of cards and stayed up half the night trying to get it just right, the right font, the right color, everything. And the next day, there was Elizabeth.
And I was so impressed. She had a card. You know, like, I was a grown-up with a job, and so I had a card. She was a seminarian with no card. So then she appears with a card. And so at this conference, I was part of a panel discussion about multiple oppressions, and Cheryl was the moderator of the panel. But I didn't know that beforehand.
I didn't know that beforehand, but I made sure she got that card.
It's like, oh, there's the cute woman again. Yay! So I gave her my card.
And one thing led to another, and here we are 10 years later, and still in church.
Still in church. We moved to the fabulous Cape Fear area. Cheryl was called to the Unitarian Universalist congregation here, and we had choices of being other places, and yes, I had veto power about where we'd go, and we loved it.
Absolutely.
We just loved it, you know, and we didn't want to move further north. We wanted to move someplace warm and the beach, you know, like in the car at the ocean in 15 minutes.
Wonderful.
Philadelphia, it's like an all-day excursion. Not to like badmouth Philly, I love Philly, but in the car at the ocean, 15 minutes, wow. And the people are fabulous.
And faith still plays a very big role in our lives, not just because I am a minister, but because it's central. It's central to both our lives, and it was wonderful for me and
Yes,
for
yes.
Elizabeth that we could find a faith community of people who accept us, not just accept us, who celebrate
Right.
who we are, just
Yeah.
as we are.
Right.
And we never have to think
Mm.
about, is it okay to hold hands? Is it okay to kiss?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are who we are, as people of faith. And isn't that wonderful?
I say amen.
Amen.
And amen.
Share your story at sageusa.org/SageStory.